You're listening to the Nourished Child Podcast, episode number 9, Top-Notch Snacks for Young Athletes. Did you know that what a young athlete eats is an important ingredient to their success in sports? What should you feed your young athlete before he heads to practice? Learn about the nutrients and food combinations that will take your athlete's performance up a notch.
Welcome to the Nourished Child Podcast, a show about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of growing a healthy child. Here's your host, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert, Jill Castle.
Hi everyone, it's Jill Castle, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert. I'm your host today, and I am so appreciative of you tuning in today. I can tell you right now, if you hear some little raindrops in the background, it's because it's a very cloudy day here in New Canaan, Connecticut, and it is very rainy and overcast. Podcast reviews are coming in, and I am so excited, and those of you who have written them, thank you so much. 1057 says, Jill from the Nourished Child provides great sound advice regarding what and how to fuel your growing children. Not only does she provide the what about nutrition, she also provides the why and focuses on helping you and your children have a healthy relationship with food, which is extremely important in my opinion. Thank you, 1057. I couldn't agree with you more. Listener Katie Ferraro says, great podcast for parents or caregivers seeking expert advice regarding child nourishment and feeding. As a dietitian, I really appreciate Jill's straightforward, no-nonsense, and evidence-backed nutrition recommendations and family feeding advice. As a new mom to a 2-year-old and infant quadruplets, yes, folks, quadruplets, I especially love her passion for her craft and the anecdotal input from 25-plus years of childhood feeding expertise. If you are looking for time-tested, proven approaches to fostering healthy feeding in your family, this podcast certainly fits the bill. Wow, Katie. Wow. I can only say wow on several things. Thank you so much for your review. And wow, 4 babies all at the same age. That is certainly survival, and my heart and joy and best wishes go out to you. You can get the show notes for this episode at jillcastle.com/009. So I wanted to start the show off today and tell you a little bit of a story actually that happened, not to my children, but a friend of my child's. And it is such a great segue into what I am talking about today. So this young athlete that I know had a bad experience the other day. Unfortunately, at school, he didn't eat a very good lunch and didn't have a snack after school before he went to rowing practice. And I'm guessing he wasn't very well hydrated throughout the day either. That afternoon, the day that this happened, the entire group of rowers were doing their 2K erg times. So that's when they all get on ergometers and they try to row their hardest and get their best time. It's very common periodically during the season. They do these erg time trials just to see how they're improving and what their endurance and their physical fitness is. And unfortunately, this guy got very sick because he had no gas in the tank, if you will. He became very disoriented after he rowed, was throwing up, got very, very sick, and in the end was fine, but it sure gave everybody a big scare because he was not looking good and experienced what probably was, and again, I'm not a physician and I wasn't there, so I'm relaying what my son told me, but probably overheated, underhydrated, some heat illness, and it was pretty scary there for a while. So it is an extreme situation, but I'm sure that at some point, if you have young athletes, you have seen or heard of young athletes getting themselves into trouble. That trouble stems from oftentimes not being well fueled and or not being well hydrated before they head into practice or competition. So you and I both know that food is essential for performance. And today what we're talking about is healthy snacks for young athletes. I get asked this question all the time. What is a good snack for my athlete? So I think we are definitely diving into that today. But first off, I want to talk a little bit about the snacking culture in sports. And it's quite interesting. On one hand, on one extreme, you have all these young soccer players, young little athletes playing baseball, playing basketball, maybe swimming, really young athletes. I'm talking 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, maybe even younger than 8. And when you go to the soccer fields or you go to the pool or wherever they're playing their sports, you might notice that they get snacks, a lot of them. They get snacks for halftime, and those snacks might be things like cupcakes or cookies or juice boxes. And at the same time, you might sit there and scratch your head and say, they really haven't been playing that much. In terms of duration, they're settling in under an hour. And some of them on the fields at the games aren't even playing hardly at all. They might get, a couple of minutes on the field and then they're on the sidelines. So there's that end of the snacking culture where we are giving young athletes inappropriate snacks when they don't need them. And then on the other end is the athletes, the highly elite athletes who are putting in 2-3 hours a day of practice, and they're not eating enough. They're not using snacks to really help them fuel their performance. They're forgetting snacks or choosing the wrong foods, and then ultimately, having a terrible experience like my son's friend, or just being sort of subpar in their athletic endeavors. So what do snacks do for the exercising body? The best snacks, and I say this all the time to my clients and when I'm speaking, the best snacks for young athletes are ones that provide optimal fuel for the body and are actually eaten and hopefully cover hunger and appetite. So there are certain nutrients that snacks offer that are ideal for the young athlete. Number one, carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are the preferred fuel source for muscles, and you can find carbohydrates in foods like grains, so breads, rices, pastas, crackers, cereals. So any kind of food that might be made from a grain. You can also find carbs in dairy products. So the carbohydrate in milk or yogurt is a great source of carbs for the muscles. And you can also find carbs in fruits and vegetables. Carbs are basically the gasoline for muscles. It's the energy source that keeps your young athlete's muscles energized and going, and are really, the anchor of a sports diet. So a carbohydrate-based diet is the anchor, I'll say that again, is the anchor of a young athlete's diet. So if you hear that carbs are bad or you're avoiding carbs yourself, that is absolutely what you do not want to do with your young athlete. Young athletes need those carbohydrates not only to fuel their muscles, but to also sustain their growth and development. Protein is another nutrient that is very helpful when you're thinking about planning healthy snacks for young athletes. Protein helps the young athlete build and repair muscle after they exercise. It also helps ward off excess hunger. So protein is really, as a nutrient, has been shown in the research, particularly in children, in a whole different population of children. But it has been shown that when you pair protein with a vegetable or a fruit, for example, it's much more satisfying and satiating to the child's appetite. So it actually helps them go for a longer period of time without becoming really, really hungry. Protein is not supposed to be an energy source, But if your athlete is cutting out carbohydrate, it will be used as an energy source, which is not ideal. So here are some key concepts you'll want to have in mind when planning your athlete's snacks. So those key nutrients I just mentioned, carbohydrate and protein, you want to make sure those key nutrients are included when you think about snacks. So combining the two of them is key to long-lasting fuel for your athlete and some elements that help them recover and repair their muscles after intensive training. Especially if your athlete is training or competing for an hour or more, you definitely want to include carbohydrate and protein in their snack. And don't worry, I'm going to actually attach in the show notes, I'm going to attach a free download for you that's called 70 Awesome Pre-Workout Snacks for the young athlete. And you can actually use a lot of those snacks for their post-workout as well. So snacks that just contain carbohydrate, like an apple or just some orange fishy crackers, for example, are fine for shorter events or practices or even less intensive exercises, but they aren't ideal for the young athlete who's exercising for over an hour. So you really do want to build in that protein component. When do athletes need a snack? That's a really good question, because if you go out on those soccer fields and you see these little 7 and 8 year olds playing and they stop at halftime and they have a big snack in the middle of the field and then they get back out and they play for maybe another 25 minutes and half the kids are only playing half the time, they're not playing the full game, you start to think about, do those kids really even need a snack? And in my opinion, and my rule that I use, and according to the research, they don't. So here's the rule that I use. If your young athlete is exercising under an hour in duration, he probably doesn't need an extra snack outside of his routine meals and snacks. So for the general elementary age student, that's going to be 3 meals and about 2 snacks a day. For the teenager, again, that's probably 3 meals and 1 snack a day. So again, if your athlete is not participating in exercise that goes beyond 1 hour in duration, he probably does not need a snack. Now, if you find your athlete wants a snack, or the snacking culture within the team would suggest that he should have a snack, then my suggestion is to just use fresh fruit and water as a snack. When you choose just fresh fruit, you're adding nutrition to your child's overall diet. So you're building in nutrition for the day. And there's not really anything bad about doing that. But if you look at conceptually, does their body need the extra fuel? If a child's exercising for under an hour, no, they don't. If you have a young athlete that is exercising for over an hour, and in an intense sport like swimming or rowing or running or football or basketball, I would plan for a hefty snack or even maybe a 4th meal to cover their energy needs for exercise. So again, that rule for me or from me is, if your young athlete is exercising for over an hour in duration, and the sport is pretty intense, meaning that they are hot, they're sweaty, their respiratory rate is elevated pretty consistently, then yes, they need a hefty snack that's going to include carbohydrate and protein to cover their energy needs. So an example of this would be a rower, for example, who participates in an extended training session, about 2 hours, might need a full sandwich and a glass of milk before practice, while a volleyball player, who also practices for a long time, but at an overall lower intensity, might do well with just a slice of peanut butter toast. Little soccer players who have a 45-minute practice may not need any snack outside of their regular meal and snack routine. Research suggests that children who play sports eat more junk food than children who don't play sports. That's a pretty sobering research finding. And part of that is because I think there's this mentality amongst athletes, young athletes in particular, that as they grow up and play their sport, they learn that they can probably eat whatever they want and they don't have to worry about it because they're active and they'll burn it off. But feasting after physical activity can negate the positive effects and promote untimely and potentially excessive eating. So if kids are exercising and then they're just eating a lot of unhealthy food, maybe some junk food, maybe chips, maybe candy, maybe ice cream, that can essentially ruin all the good they've done for their body by exercising or playing a sport. There are plenty of foods around that are full of empty calories, meaning they have calories, but they have few to no nutrients. Things like candy, chips, crackers, cookies. Simply said, these foods don't add nutritional value to the growing athlete's diet. And remember, your athlete is growing. If you have a young athlete, you're not only covering their needs for sports, you're also covering their requirements for growth. And because you're supporting both growth and development, as well as athletic performance, you definitely want to go for wholesome, real food. This will fuel your athlete's growth and his athletic performance. And the best foods to target are going to include fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean protein sources, dairy foods, and healthy fats. So what are those? Those are your food groups. So again, healthy snacks for young athletes can be really beneficial, not only in fueling your young athlete for his sport, but also for ensuring that your young athlete is getting the calories and the nutrients he needs to continue to grow and develop well. I've got that download for you that will give you some ideas, but when I talk carbs and protein, I'm talking about things like cereal with milk, or yogurt with fruit and granola, or a slice of toast with nut butter, or a slice of toast with cheese, or a turkey sandwich on whole grain bread. So there are a lot of these little combinations of real food that are, as I mentioned, more nutritious and more satisfying for your athlete. The most important thing to remember is that you want to add nutrition to your athlete's diet, and you can do that very easily by being strategic with your snacks. Okay, folks, don't forget to head over and get the show notes at jillcastle.com/009. That's 009 for episode 9, and I will have the links and resources related to this show there for you. As I mentioned, I will include a post that has an embedded free download called the 70 Awesome Pre-Workout Snacks for Young Athletes. It's a compilation of snack food combinations for young athletes. And what's great about it is there's 70 of them, so you can have your young athlete look at it, circle the snacks he or she would like to try and eat, or even cross out the ones that he has absolutely no interest in. So you have a bank of options that will help you plan out your weekly athlete snacks. You can also get more information about what and how to feed your young athlete in my book, Eat Like a Champion, Performance Nutrition for Your Young Athlete, available on Amazon.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, there are a few things you can do to help the Nourished Child podcast grow. Write a review on iTunes, subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play Music, Tuned In, and more, or share the podcast on social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or Pinterest, wherever you hang out. Let your peers know about the Nourished Child podcast. The more parents that know about the show, the more informed and better at nourishing their child they will be. And don't forget, I'm hosting a big giveaway on my blog. You can win a free enrollment to the Kids Healthy Weight Project, a one-on-one consultation with me, or 2 signed copies of my books. You just need to listen to the podcast, which if you're hearing this now, you already are. Go to iTunes and write an honest review. The giveaway is located on my blog. It's jillcastle.com/childhood-nutrition/nourished child podcast live giveaway. I'll include that link in the show notes. As always, thanks for joining me today, and I am so glad you were here. Please be sure to give that child, big or small, athlete or not, in your life, a big squeeze today. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Nourished Child Podcast, where the #1 goal is to help you grow a nourished child, inside and out.